Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to see something which is very interesting and which is quite often played against the first move d4, that is the queen's pawn opening. The opening is called as the Budapest Gambit and we will be studying all the traps in this opening today in this video. So without any further delay, let us get started. The Budapest Gambit starts against the queen's pawn opening. So white has to play d4 to be able to go into the Budapest opening. Knight f6 is a very common response to the queen's pawn opening on the first move. White goes c4 here, after which there comes the key move which initiates the Budapest Gambit, e5, a pawn sacrifice. D into e5, knight goes to g4, attacking this e5 pawn and at the same time putting pressure on this f2 square. Now white has two ideas here. He can either play knight f3 defending the pawn, or another idea is bishop f4 defending this pawn on e5. You can play the Budapest trap if white starts with this variation, bishop f4 here. Now black has to play bishop b4 check. Now if you look at this position, white would generally prefer to play knight d2 because if he plays knight c3, it is going to ruin his pawn structure. And also he would not like to get his bishop back to d2, wasting a tempo, and protection of this pawn is also gone once the bishop moves. So knight d2 here. After knight d2, knight c6, putting pressure on the e5 pawn, which black had sacrificed, and black is trying to regain the pawn. Knight f3, queen e7, a3. Now comes the key idea. Instead of defending this bishop, black plays knight g into e5. Can you spot the threat? What happens if white takes the bishop? There is a brilliant way to box this king with knight d3 check, and all white's pieces are just cramping his own king, and the king is checkmated right on the e1 square. So another option here, instead of taking the bishop, is take the knight, but then knight into e5. Still, he cannot take the bishop. If he does, there is a mate. Another knight had come to e5. So one more option here is to play bishop into e5, then bishop into d2. Because the knight is gone, if you take the bishop now, your bishop is hanging. So first bishop into d2, queen into d2, queen into e5. And if you see now, black has regained the pawn and has achieved complete equality out of the opening. There's one more option. If here, instead of d into e5, white goes for the d5 approach, not accepting the gambit pawn, black can simply develop bishop c5, putting pressure here. Now here, there is a trick in the position. It's very common, and a lot of people would love to pin the knight if it's possible. Like bishop g5 is a very common move here, which most of the players would love to play. But this is a big mistake. I would want you to pause here and find it out for yourself if you can. Black must play knight e4, attacking the bishop, attacking the pawn on f2, and controlling the d2 square from where the king can run. Okay, you can say, okay, the queen is hanging, but white cannot capture it, because if he does, bishop into f2, it's a checkmate. And if he decides to go back and defend the f2 mate threat, there is bishop into e3, f into e3, queen h4 check. Again, the king has got no way to go. White has to play g3, after which knight into g3. The rook is trapped. Another important trap in this opening starts on the second move. If white plays the move knight d2, trying to go into the Cole system setup, not committing c4 on the second move, then black can go simply e5 here as well, following the Budapest Gambit trap. This is also called as the Lazard Gambit. After e5, d into e5, knight g4, same idea, attack the e5 pawn, put more pressure here. If at all white decides to kick this knight, it's a huge blunder. Can you find what should black do here? It's an amazing move because everything is so boxed. White has played knight d2, because of which all his pieces look like in a cramped box. They cannot move. They do not have enough squares. They do not have enough room to move themselves. The move is knight e3. The drawback behind this move h3 was white has weakened the dark squares. And if this f pawn is gone, there is no g3 resource to block this diagonal. Now knight e3 attacks the queen, and because of the move knight d2 and other pieces, the queen is trapped. He has to take to save the queen, and then comes the move queen h4 check. There is no piece which can block the check here. Only pawn can go to g3, after which queen into g3, it's still a checkmate. There's one more interesting trap on the fourth move if white decides to play knight f3 instead of bishop f4. Black can play d6 here, after which black is pressurizing the e5 pawn, so white takes e into d6, bishop into d6. Now, if white decides to kick this knight with the move h3, it's a big mistake. Black can simply take the pawn on f2 here, attacking the queen. After knight into f2, white has to take the knight because of the fork. And now comes the key idea, because the queen on d1 is hanging and there is a potential discovery on the d file. Bishop goes to g3 check, not allowing the king to go back and defend the queen. And he can take the bishop all right, but after queen into d1, this bishop is trapped, so there is no counter discovery with a move like bishop b5 check, which white would love to see. And white is just down a queen. So with all these traps discussed, is this Budapest Gambit opening winning for black or clearly better for black? Absolutely not. All these traps are only dangerous if white is not careful enough and prophylactic enough in his approach. For example, let us quickly go to all the traps and understand how to defend against them. For example, let's say if you play knight d2, e5, d5 is fine, knight g4. The only trick here is don't play h3. It weakens the dark squares. You can simply get developed first. Later you can play h3 here. It's an absolutely acceptable position. White looks slightly better. Okay, this knight is slightly misplaced, but white can handle this position well. Another trap that we saw was starting with the move d5, rejecting the gambit pawn. So d5, bishop c5. Again, bishop g5 is the move which is the culprit here, a big blunder, allowing knight e4. What you can do here is simply play a move like knight f3 or knight c3, which is not bad at all. Black cannot sacrifice on f2. Even if he attacks with knight e4, there is no problem whatsoever, because white can simply block the diagonal with the move e3. Another trap that we saw was knight f3, d6, ed6, bishop into d6. Again, h3 is the culprit here, because of which knight into f2 happened and then bishop g3 check came in the game. Here, after bishop into d6, anyway, even if h3 is not played, black is threatening knight into f2, bishop g3 check. So for that, you need to be very careful. Either you can play knight c3, defending the queen so that knight f2, king f2, bishop g3, the queen is not hanging anymore. Or another option is you can also play e3, after which if knight into f2, king into f2, bishop g3 is a mistake because of king e2. The point is the king can come back to defend the queen here. So this opening is definitely not clearly better or even better for black if white plays well, but it is definitely tricky, and against amateurs, if the players do not know these traps, it is quite easy to fall for them. And I would highly recommend you to prepare this opening and try it in a few games. Also, let me know in the comment section below how was the experience of playing this Budapest Gambit as black. If you are planning to prepare the Budapest Gambit and want to play this opening, you must know these traps. If you want to know more about the theory and the plans in the Budapest Gambit, let me know in the comment section below, and we will make a separate video on the Budapest Gambit. If you have found this video instructive, guys, please do like the video and support our channel by subscribing it. Also, do not forget to click on the bell icon so that you will be notified with our latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. See you soon.